I still remember that house, the one my family left years ago, and the terror that haunted my childhood there. It stood at the end of a long, winding road, cloaked in shadows and surrounded by overgrown weeds. Its windows were like hollow eyes, staring out into the darkened world, and the paint was peeling, revealing the wood beneath, weathered and worn. I was just a child, barely 10, when I was left alone one long, miserable night, and it was on that night that my childhood innocence began to unravel. My parents had gone out on urgent business, their hurried whispers filled with worry as they rushed out the door, leaving me in that old, creaking mansion on the outskirts of town, a place that, even then, carried an air of desolation and sorrow. I had always known the house was peculiar, filled with strange nooks and crannies that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. But on that night, as twilight faded into an inky darkness, I was forced to confront the unsettling reality of my surroundings. At first, everything seemed ordinary enough. I sat in the dim light of my room, the pages of my comic books fluttering as I tried to distract myself from the howling wind outside. The stories of heroes and villains provided a temporary escape, a chance to forget the oppressive weight of the house pressing down on me. But as the hours passed, an unsettling silence descended upon the house, thick and suffocating. The shadows grew longer, stretching across the walls like dark fingers, and I felt the first stirrings of unease creep into my bones. That silence was soon broken by a faint whisper, a murmur that seemed to float through the halls, calling my name softly. It was a sound that sent shivers racing down my spine, a voice that felt both familiar and foreign. I strained to listen, hoping it was merely the wind playing tricks on me. But the whisper persisted, growing louder, more insistent. I clutched my blanket tighter, willing myself to believe it was just my imagination. But deep down, I knew something was amiss. At midnight, I awoke to the sound of the floorboards creaking under invisible footsteps. I lay frozen under my blanket, heart pounding, as I listened to that eerie sound getting closer, then fading away into the darkness. In the weak glow of a nightlight, I noticed the shadows in my room dancing in ways they shouldn't. One shadow, in particular, seemed to linger longer than the others, a dark, indistinct shape that made me shudder with inexplicable dread. It felt as though it was watching me, studying me, waiting for the moment to strike. Over the next few nights, the paranormal occurrences grew bolder. I would see fleeting images of a pale, sorrowful face in the mirror, a face that wasn't mine. It was a visage etched with sorrow, eyes wide and pleading, as if trapped in a world of despair. I remember one incident in the hallway. The door to my room slowly creaked open on its own, revealing a glimpse of something I cannot now fully describe. A figure standing silently in the gloom, its eyes empty and unblinking. I wanted to scream, but my voice caught in my throat, and all I could do was lie there, paralyzed by fear. The whispers evolved into a low, almost rhythmic chanting that seemed to emanate from the very walls. It was a sound that resonated deep within me, a haunting melody that wrapped around my mind like a shroud. I could feel the presence of something unseen watching me, a coldness that spread like a chill through my bones every time I passed a particular corner of the house. It was as if the house itself was alive with memories of pain and despair, memories that desperately clawed their way into my consciousness, begging to be acknowledged. The terror reached its peak one stormy night when thunder rattled the old windows, shaking the very foundation of the house. I distinctly remember sitting up in bed as the door creaked open wider than ever before, as if inviting something in. In that moment, I heard the soft laughter of a child, a sound that was both haunting and deeply melancholic. It resonated in my ears, filling the room with an eerie echo that seemed to bounce off the walls. I don't know how long I sat there, trembling in the dark, until the noises finally subsided, leaving an oppressive silence that seemed to echo for hours. When my parents finally returned home from their trip, I was a trembling wreck. My hands shook as I tried to tell them what I had experienced. The whispers, the moving shadows, the inexplicable presence that seemed to haunt every corner of that forsaken house. Their faces grew pale, and the gravity of my account was impossible to ignore. That same night, they made the decision to leave. We packed up our few belongings and left that place behind, never to return. Even now, as I recount those childhood memories, a chill runs down my spine. I have tried to move on, to put the past behind me, but the echoes of that night remain, a constant reminder of the inexplicable terror that once plagued my home. The house, with all its dark secrets, was abandoned for a reason. It wasn't just old and creaky, it was a vessel for something far beyond the realm of normal, something that turned our lives upside down and forced us to flee into the safety of the unknown. I share this story not to frighten, but to remind myself that sometimes the ghosts of our past are all too real. They linger in the corners of our minds, waiting for a moment of weakness to resurface. And sometimes the only way to escape them is to leave everything behind, to step into the light and hope that the shadows do not follow.